Mark's unfortunately got COVID, so he's going to be miming or gesticulating whenever he wants to try and show something. But yeah, I'll be trying to take us through this AGM. So thank you to everyone for attending. Yeah, looking forward to going through this. And yeah, so start off with the meeting protocol, all fairly standard fare. It's being recorded. Please keep your cameras and microphones off for bandwidth. Please ask questions via the Q&A function. Are we still doing that, or are people using the chat function? Seems to be a mixture of both.
I think we should just stick with the chat.
Stick with chat, so ignore that. Please use the chat, and we'll try and answer your questions during the next hour. But if we can't, I think we'll collate them and we'll send out responses to them afterwards. So when we get to the formal kind of voting part, the motions will be proposed by the chair. And if you'd like to second a motion, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. And we'll be using the polling function to vote, but please don't vote if you already have voted online or via post. And yeah, just reiterating, we'll use chunk functionality to express any thoughts and your questions as well, please. So here is the agenda. So I am going to give a run through of a summary of the year, and then we have Gary talking about asset management and performance. I'll then come back to talk about power prices for a little bit, and then Annette will talk through the financial report. We'll have the voting on the motions, closing remarks, and then we'll end the AGM for the wind, and then we'll go into the future Westmill section afterwards. So I'm going to try and give this summary. I'm going to keep an eye on Mark, see how kind of much he's gesticulating, to see if I'm getting it right or not. But I think the idea was for us not to become spread too thin. So we've got broad objectives that we've been trying to focus on to make sure our time is being used effectively. And they can be kind of classified as firstly asset management, very important, obviously making sure the turbines turn when we need them to. So Gary's going to be talking about this in a bit, but we've been building on work by previous board members, excellent work to strengthen the monitoring and response, and also relating to a strategic asset management plan. So we brought in external help with BVG to help really focus the areas that we look at for kind of effective management of the assets and trying to be as proactive as we could. So Gary's going to be talking about that in a little bit. A lot of work going involved in that, and I think it's been very well done and kind of excellent work. Next part then is the long-term aspirations. So previously been mentioned that we've secured an extension to our existing planning permission for a further 15 years. So this site now has planning permission out till 2047, which is excellent. Really the first step of kind of many or a journey, to use horrible corporate speak, looking at the various options available to us, just to keep the co-op viable, keep the asset up and running if we can, and explore our options. So we've been looking at the business case under development. So that is looking at the status quo, and then what happens if this then goes out for another 15 years, and then we've got future plans to kind of build on that through permutations on all the different options that we might have in a very ever-changing energy system, energy market, and world. You know, we're talking quite a long way out, so there's a lot to consider. And then last but not least, we've been kind of considering making sure we're upholding the cooperative principles. It's mainly been led by Mark. Excellent work as ever from Mark. He does everything. And so that includes the trading dividend. So that's with Co-op Energy, with Unity supporting them. So linking to specific electricity tariffs and trying to pass back dividend through participation or use of that tariff. Member services training. So this is with CAT in Machynlleth, so Centre for Alternative Technology, and I think again excellent work there. I think we're going to be announcing more stuff formally soon. Mark's nodding, which is good. And then finally, we have also, along with solar as well, supported the schools energy co-op by providing them a kind of bridging loan to help them use the capital to help kind of install more projects, some more solar on the roofs of schools, which, you know, is just such an obvious and brilliant thing to do. You know, so definitely want to support that, and it's been very well received. And you know, Schools Energy Co-op were very appreciative, and so I think that's something we'd look to develop further. And it, you know, it also ties in with things that Rose was talking about earlier, kind of co-ops helping each other and kind of looking to do things a bit differently. So next slide, please. So, I mean, we've been doing this for for a long time now, but I think this has been further entrenched, but we've been working very closely, the two co-ops, and it kind of makes sense on a lot of levels. But, you know, helping share workload and share ideas, share learnings and challenges. So it's very good cooperation. We have a new accountants, which is Critchley's, which went through a kind of formal process for us to choose them. So that was completed last year. We plan on sharing the same back office from this autumn, so we'll be both using Energy for All. And we are, I mean, we're going to talk about this, well, Angela or Ryan are going to be talking about this later on in the future bit, but we're looking to get better coordinated on our member communications, just to make sure that we're having, you know, as best we can, feedback, keeping you informed of what we're doing and getting your ideas and kind of growing that as much as we can, or as much as you want us to, I guess, probably a better way of doing it. And then beyond generation is just looking at other things we might be able to do outside of just, I'd say just, I don't mean that in a denigrating way, but just producing electricity. Then we have reaccredited with Fair Tax, which is excellent work. Fair Tax is brilliant scheme. We have new directors who came in last year, Vivian and Gary, and both have been absolute assets to the board, and we're very pleased to have them. And we have also joined ResScoop, which is a pan-European kind of, I'm going to go into my day job, kind of, I'm going to say like an industry group. They probably would hate that term. Group of like-minded community focused individuals and groups looking to promote community energy across Europe, and getting involved in kind of lobbying and stuff. Mark will keep me right in the chat if I've strayed into corporate speak for that. Yeah, thank you. Good idea, Mark, for putting a link up. So what time are we on? Yeah, we're okay for time. So next slide, please. So I'm going to hand over to Gary, who's going to run through the asset management and performance for 2021. You there, Gary?
Thanks, Josh. Oh, I banged my knee. So sorry. Yeah, I'm here. So greetings from, I guess I may be the furthest away member today. I don't know if that is the case, but greetings from not so sunny Vilnius in Lithuania today, which is where I am today. Okay, so just to make a start then. So yeah, this year's performance, I think anybody who sat through the solar board meeting earlier is going to hear a little bit of a repeat message in this around performance, but let's go. I guess I should just make a quick thanks to the two teams in particular who look after the assets with us, which is Energy for All and the team there, and BVG, who just briefly mentioned about some of the work they're doing on strategic asset management, and we'll touch on that a little bit. But to say last year was a below average wind year, I think it was one of the lowest wind years on record last year, or at least, whilst we've been monitoring for winds for the last 25 to 30 years. And what was particularly peculiar about energy yield last year, just to kind of bring up my day job, was that low turbines, so turbines that sit relatively low to the ground, which is the older fleet, tended to suffer more than the turbines that are higher up. And it seems to do something to do with the wind shear and the Gulf Stream. I won't bore you with the technical details. Availability is down a little bit, and sadly that trend continues a little bit. We are struggling just a little bit with our availability at the moment, and I'm not going to blame the age of the turbines particularly, rather than a bit of a coordination with our maintenance partners actually on the ground, and that's something we'll be looking to do a little bit more with this year to try and improve ourselves. And the turbines, obviously they're all getting old now. 14 years old is yeah, some of the oldest turbines in the UK, but realistically they should run for 25 to 30 years, so we shouldn't blame that. We had a few grid outages that caused some fairly catastrophic failures for us in the turbines. We think we've solved that problem now by installing some clever bits of software and some uninterruptible power supplies, which will keep the turbines at least alive whilst the power goes down. Yaw gearboxes has been a particular problem for us. That's the piece of equipment that turns the wind turbine into the wind, so that it's always hunting in the right direction. And they take quite a lot of pressure and pain. It's probably the most strained part on the turbine. Getting access to them pieces of equipment has been difficult. However, good work from Energy for All, and I think we're now relatively confident with our stock, and we seem to have a good source to keep that going. So we've solved the problem there. Capacity failing is something we haven't yet got to the bottom of. We hope the uninterruptible power supplies will help us there and will solve that problem. Yeah, leaky gear pumps is a relatively straightforward thing. And the pitch tracking fault, we suspected it was to do with the yaw gearboxes, but actually we now suspect it may be to do with the slewing ring itself. So there's some more investigation work to go on this year to try and improve that situation. Next slide, Josh, if you can, or whoever's in control. So you can see the availability there. Our benchmark is 95%. It's quite a stretch to get a constant 95%, but it's something we should absolutely aim for. A lot of this really has been due to electronic faults rather than mechanical faults, and we'll probably touch a little bit on that in the strategic asset management plan, and I can give you an indication of how we can improve that. But yeah, I mean, we should. I'm hoping that by the back end of this year we should start to see some improvements for this. Next slide, please. Yeah, I guess that just emphasizes the difference in energy yield between 2020 and 2021. Obviously, the blue bars are 2020. Now, 2020 was a particularly strong year, and you can see clearly the difference. So whilst in 2020 we were considerably over our target, in 2021 we were under it. And just for the record, that continues through the first quarter of this year as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've been doing quite a bit of work on, given the fact that we're going to extend the life of the project, or we have, or we're going through, let's say, Josh, the life extension, because securing the planning permission is only one part of the conundrum, if you like. There are other things that we need to do. But given the fact that we are planning to extend the life, there are certain things that we now need to look at and really make sure they're fit for the future. The biggest thing in there, well, the two biggest things were rotor blade monitoring and review, which we've completed. The next thing is the condition of the drivetrain, which is the gearbox and the generator. And I say they're the most important. It's simply because they're both the most costly and they're the biggest downtime if we have to do something to them. So that work will start in August this year. We'll start on that, and the idea is to complete that in August. Typically, August being one of the lowest wind months of the year, we can deal with it on. In conjunction with that work, we've also been doing, I'll come back to life extension. We've also been doing some SCADA replacement. So the wind turbines are 15 years old now. In terms of mechanical components, that isn't really anything to be concerned about. But if you imagine it's being run by 15-year-old computers and computer software, so Windows 2000 sort of things, yeah, you start to see where the challenges for us lie. So we're now in the process of looking at the SCADA. The SCADA is the data acquisition system. So it's the machines that take the data in the turbine, make the turbine do what it needs to do, but also communicates that data back to us in the central location, so we know what's happening, and also tells the grid operator what's happening with the turbines as well. So we're going through a process of renewing that, or at least pricing the renewal, and that work will probably start at the end of this year. It's relatively quick to perform, so we could do it in a high wind year. Strategic spare holding, I saw somebody say buy the spares somewhere else in the comments earlier on, and you're quite right, we should definitely buy the spares. We have actually increased our strategic spare holding considerably, but there is some more work to do now on really just checking, no, not checking, that's unfair, we already do that, controlling the spares that we hold and making a plan for the future, let's say. The other things on here, which is rotor blade enhancement, we think there are some, at some points there are some issues with the turbines not tracking the wind properly. So we've done a small piece of work already just to kind of confirm our suspicions, and we think it is the case. So we're going to do a further study and probably just do some enhancement to make sure we can track better. Just going back to the life extension, so one of the pieces of work that needs to be done obviously is securing the planning permission. The other piece of work is to secure the landowner agreement, and then the third and fourth things to do are will the turbine stand the test of time, and is it economically feasible? Josh and I have been doing some work on both of the last two things, which is will the turbine stand the test of time, how much will the spares cost us, what spares should we hold, and what does the economic model look like. We'll probably give you a little bit more of an update on that later, because we're really in the thick of analysis of the results there. And the maintenance repair budget we've done for this year, but I think the work that we're doing, Josh and I, on the long-term assets will also feed back into that as well. Next slide, yeah. So we've done quite a bit of work, but we are a little bit behind on our servicing. So pitch cone replacements was a huge piece of work to do. UPS replacements, which is the thing I talked about earlier on about uninterruptible power supplies. We've completed the blade inspection work. We've replaced the yaw gearboxes on 2 turbines, and we've got another one that we think that needs to do it as well now. And we've done the full oil change on the whole set as well. So the gearbox inspections will take place in August, SCADA replacement in December. The UPS on T1 will happen next week. And yeah, we have plenty of yaw gearboxes in stock, which was our big Achilles heel, if you like. Just one other thing on those UPSs, I mean, at some point in the year, it cost us quite dearly. We had a power outage from the network operator. They couldn't reset us in time, we couldn't get people on site to reset in time, and we got SCADA problems as well. So we lost quite a lot of production in a week that it was really, really windy, and we absolutely have to not let that happen again. Next one, Josh, please. Okay, so here you can see generation this year. So we've had a good February, but then a poor March and a poor April. Actually, some of this you have to take with no, not with a pinch of salt, but this isn't just wind, this is also availability. And during March, we had quite poor availability. So we should have recovered a little bit in March, but we didn't, unfortunately. April and May are poor wind months. Yeah, I don't think I was. I mean, we're below budget again. I'm hoping that by the end of the year that we start to improve with that, especially if we can do the SCADA enhancement and the wind tracking enhancement.
Are there any questions in the chat that we can put
I
to
was
Gary?
going to say, I think that's the last one, so we could probably start to go through any questions that people have got now, if you want. Josh. Let me scroll back up and have a look.
Yeah, Keith has said he's involved in maintaining and upgrading some older 20-year turbines in Sweden, and would be very happy to share lessons, experiences, if that would be of interest, which I thought it
Keith,
would.
you've got a job.
Yeah. You're hired, Keith. So yeah, we'll.
Keith, particularly the bonus turbines, obviously, which is the turbines that we're running on this site. Okay, they're slightly bigger, they're 1.3s, but still, your feedback on SCADA and the Siemens logic systems and how we go about that, I won't go into too much detail, but we could look for some help there. That would be really useful. Just on the next one about the spare blades and generators. So it's not as, let's deal with blades, Clive. It's not really as straightforward as you would think. Each blade set is balanced exactly to suit the turbine. So we could buy some blades, but there's no guarantee they'd be balanced, and we might spend more time balancing the blades than we would. But what we are looking at is the tip extensions. These turbines are stall regulated, which means that the tips of the blades turn rather than the whole blade, and that's something we are looking at. So far, touch wood, Clive, we've had no generator issues. If we lost a generator, it would probably be 2 or 3 weeks downtime. So it probably is something we'll look at, but the realistic life of a generator is 20 years. So I think it would be 20 years post before we start to look at that, I think.
Paul's asked a question for you, Gary.
I've got
remove gearboxes.
Yes, Paul, relatively easy, relatively straightforward, and quite a lot of these gearboxes are now kept on stock by second-hand wind turbine component companies. I don't know for certain, but I'm 99% sure that we could buy one of these in the UK relatively quickly. So what we would probably do if one failed would be take out our existing gearbox, send it for refurbishment, and then buy a new one and keep the refurbished one on stock at that point.
Okay, great. Can I move us on? I'm just conscious of time.
Yes, please, Annette.
Just bear with me. Right, so back to you, Josh, on power prices.
Yes, thank you. So just to begin, I'm sure everyone's aware of this, but I think it helps remind people and kind of sets the scene. Our site is 5 turbines. It's split into 2, one of 2 turbines and one of 3, and that's how we contract and sell the energy. We call it East and West. All of our power goes to Octopus Energy through power purchase agreements, who then use it for their co-op energy customers. Our contracting strategy is to agree contracts ahead of time. So we agree fixed price, pay as produced contracts ahead of time, and the time in which kind of further out we set them or try to agree them is based on what the market's doing. You know, I try and keep an eye on it. And when it was low a few years ago, we tried to mitigate that by only agreeing for smaller amounts of time. And now prices have risen quite a lot. We've been trying to lock out prices for as far as ahead of time as we can. So as long as the kind of market's liquid, which is usually 3 years ahead. So we've agreed our prices out till March 2025, I think which is good. We've agreed some very good power prices with Octopus. So for the year we're discussing, 2021, the kind of average power price across the 2 PPAs was £47.46 per megawatt hour. And on top of that, we get a renewable obligation certificate, got a ROC, and we get a pass-through rate for that. It's about £50, say, maybe a little bit more. And also another certificate is produced by it called REGO, which is Renewable Energy Guarantee of Origin. And these certificates are used by suppliers to kind of prove that their supply is green. They use it when they submit their fuel mix disclosure agreement, you know, to say where their energy has come from. And they have a value, and the value of those has actually gone up quite a lot recently. And that's due to last year being very still year, as Gary alluded to. But we agree the price for that in our contracts. And we agree the pass-through rate in our contracts as well for the ROCs. So during the year, last year, power prices have risen drastically, and for a multitude of reasons. And it's, you know, as Tom said at the beginning of this whole meeting, it's very much in the news, and it's something we've been aware of, and tried to kind of, as I said, lock in those prices when they could with through Unity, who we use to agree the power price agreements with Octopus. So yeah, we've locked in future prices to 2025. You know, and the weighted average prices, the average prices for the next few years are looking good. Next year 65, 23 is 69, 24 is 88, and then we've got the ROCs and REGOs on top of that. So looking pretty good. And that's it really. Yeah, last bullet is good prices agreed, and not really got much else to say. So I'll just quickly see, is there any questions about power prices?
No, we're good
Cool.
too.
Cool. Well, let's move on then, please, Annette.
Okay.
To yourself.
Okay, I'll just quickly go through the accounts. We did send the full audited accounts, which also included Mark's strategic report, or the board's strategic report, the agenda, and obviously we're going to vote on the reappointment of directors. So we sent candidate statements as well. So if we have a quick look at the income statement and compare it to last year, as Gary said before, 2021 was a really poor wind year compared to 2020, which was an excellent wind year. So you can see the income turnover much reduced, at least by just over 24% on last year. Your cost of sales, in there you generally find your rates, your operation and maintenance costs, your landowner fees, and the biggest portion in there is depreciation. That's included in cost of sales as well, and that comes in at 453,000 a year. As we've said a couple of years ago, we decided to increase the depreciation, so it ends in time for the end of the ROC in 2027. So that left us with a gross surplus of 177,000 against 405 last year. Admin expenses, very similar to last year. There was a little extra costs in there to deal with the extension on the planning. So there was consultancy fees in there. So our surplus that we then decide on how much goes to the members. 112,442. Like I say, a big drop from last year's 344. And then if we just look at how did we spend the surplus, we dealt with the trading dividend, as Tom mentioned earlier on. That was £375 for the wind. We paid member share interest out at 2.5%, so that amounted to 97,796. And the community donations, we've donated to the WeSet group 7,500. Previously it was 6.5, but we've increased that to 7.5. Last year there was an additional donation to another group. That's why we had 7,000 last year. And then of course we've got a small tax liability that has to go through the accounts. So that's leaving us with a reserve of 5,548, which we will add to the 116 last year. Then if we look at the balance sheet, the assets there, your turbines, they will go down in value each year by the cost of the depreciation. And you can see our cash is going up primarily due to the depreciation because it's not a paid out item. And then stocks and stores, well, this is the spares that Gary talked about before, the yaw gearboxes and the computer, how do we call it, the installation, etc., and the repair of the computers. They cost quite a lot of money. So we decided this year, because we'd spent this money in 2021 in preparation for this year, we would account for this in the accounts. So that will remain on the balance sheet until we use those stocks. Debtors, less creditors, nothing to report much there. And of course now our general reserve has now gone up to 122,512. So it's 116 last year plus the 5 from this year. And all these numbers here, they will balance up to the 122 and then the members' share capital, which is 3.7 million. Last year we had a withdrawal of shares from a number of members. And that's it on the finances. We did have 1 or 2 questions, but we've answered those and we've circulated to members prior to the AGM. And you can also find a copy on the members area of the website. Have we got any questions, Josh, on the accounts?
No, I don't think so.
We're all okay?
We're all okay. And thank you for that.
That's brilliant.
Thank you. Okay.
So we're going to move on to the motions now. Just to let you know, we got 12 apologies sent through. This year we got 232 members voted already online and on posts, whereas last year it was 154 members. I think this year Tammy's probably been badgering you to please vote. As Tom said earlier, it's your co-op. You need to get involved. So, you know, please use your voting and get involved with the co-op. So Tammy, are you ready for to launch the first motion? Have we got Tammy there?
Yep, sorry, I was on mute.
Someone has to do it.
That doesn't normally happen to me. Yes, so do you want to do who's Mark's proposing, is he?
We'll just go straight into motion 1, I think, which is the minutes from last year's AGM.
Yeah.
And like we said earlier, Mark is going to propose each motion, apart from 1 motion later on. So we just need a seconder from the members, please. Right, Roger Thompson's raised his hand.
Okay, and the poll should be on your screen now. Oh, I've got an error.
Okay, no worries. I will see if I can get it on mine.
Thanks, Sam.
No worries. Give me 2 seconds.
Just a gentle reminder, if you've already voted, please don't vote in these.
Motion 1 to approve the minutes for the Westmill Wind should now be up. So if there's an error, Tammy, I'll run through these on your behalf. Okay, we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the results, Tammy, are, hopefully you can see those, but we had 20 voting for yes to approve, 0 against, and 2 abstentions.
Okay, and I shall give you.
Sorry, Josh, was there something?
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you.
Okay, no worries.
The online and postal votes, we had 42 votes for Mark, the chair. He's voting in favour. So for 164, 1 against, and 25 abstentions. That motion is approved. So we move on to motion 2. So this is to really, as Thomas said earlier, to ratify the payment of the trading dividend of 2021, which came at £15 per member. Again, Mark is proposing. Could we have a seconder, please? I've got John Smith has popped up. Sam, could you launch the poll?
It's launched now. So we'll give it another 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So sharing those results for you now. So had 16 votes for yes to approve, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
Okay, again, 42 votes for Mark in favour, and then online and postal votes, 176 for, 9 against, and 5 abstentions. That motion is passed. So we move on to motion 3. So this is the payment of share interest to members, which is 2.5%. Again, Mark is proposing. Could we have a seconder, please? Right, Rodney Tillotson, I got your name up first. And Sam, please launch the poll.
No worries.
Sorry, I keep
You keep
going
getting
to
ready
Tammy.
for Tammy.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I can be Tammy for
Sorry,
this for the voting. It's
you be
fine.
Tammy, yes.
Thanks, Sam.
We've been a double act for the last 2 years, so forgive me.
So we'll give it another 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so showing the results of that now. So we have 21 votes for yes, 0 for no, and 1 abstention.
Okay, and online again, Marcus 42 votes in favour, and we had 185 for, 3 against, and 2 abstentions. So again, that motion is passed, and Tammy will make steps to make the payment to members in the next couple of weeks. So we move on to motion 4. So this is to approve the allocation of 7,500 to WeSet for this coming year. Again, proposed by Mark. And could we have a seconder, please? I've got Martin Shakespeare has raised his hand. Tammy, Sam, launch the poll. I'm going to say Tammy, aren't I?
Keep saying that, it's fine. I know what you're saying. Okay, so votes are coming in. Thank you. So we'll give you another 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ah, good, you got 22 there.
So show results. So we have 20 votes for yes, 0 for no, and 2 abstentions.
Excellent. Online, 42 for Mark, who's voted in favour, 169 for, 9 against, and 12 abstentions. Again, that motion is passed. We move on to motion 5. This is to accept the accounts for the year ending December 2021. Again, proposed by Mark. Could I have a seconder? Oh, I think I saw Andrea King pop up first.
Okay, I will launch
Sam?
the poll.
Yes.
Okay, that's launched. So if you could please, oh, perfect, fantastic. Okay, so we're coming up to 22. So I will give members another chance. So we'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so we've only got 21 there, but 21 all in favour of yes. No no's, no against, and no abstentions.
Okay, again, 42 from Mark voting in favour, 181 for, 2 against, 7 abstentions. That motion is passed as well. So move on to motion 6. Is that? This is to appoint Critchley's again as the auditor until the conclusion of next year's AGM. Again, proposed by Mark. Could I have a seconder, please? Could somebody pick one?
I think we've had Martin already, so maybe Kenneth Hooper this time.
Okay, launch the poll, Sam.
Launched. Again, coming up to 22, so we'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, ending poll on 21 again. So we have 20 votes for as yes, 1 for no, and 0 abstentions.
And again, Mark is voting 42 votes in favour, 182 for, 3 against, 5 abstentions. Again, that motion is approved. So we move on to motion 7, and this is to work out the trading dividend for this coming year. As Thomas said earlier, it's important we go down this route and we try and extend this out to as many members as possible. There's obviously further work to be done on it, especially in light of energy prices increasing, and of course the that community, what was it, the community tariff, we're going to extend it out to any co-op member. So I hope to see that increase over this next year or so. Again, proposed by Mark. Could I have a seconder, please? Rodney Tillotson. Thank you, Rodney. Sam?
Poll is launched. Okay, coming up to 22, so I will go up 21 even. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ending poll there, back up to 22 it seems. Sharing results of that, so we have 18 in favour, 2 against, and 2 abstentions.
Okay, again, 42, Mark is voting in favour. And then the online and postal results, 171 for, 12 against, and 7 abstentions. But again, that motion is approved. So we move on to motion 8. We want to kind of like leave this open if people wish to withdraw their shares. So again, we've put through the same allocation as last year, 200,000 for members who feel they wish to withdraw. Again, proposed by Mark. Could I have a seconder, please? James Hutton.
The poll is now being launched.
You're getting in there before I say the words.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking closer to coming up to our figures. So I'll go give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Share those now. So we have 19 for, 2 against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, Mark is voting 42 as chair in favour, 178 for, 6 against, 6 abstentions. That motion is passed. So now we move on to motion 9, and this is to re-elect our chair, Mark Luntley, as a director. Now I'm going to propose this. Could I have a seconder? I see a Pam Maxwell got in there first.
Excellent. Launching the poll. Right.
Oh, it's all looking good, Mark.
Flood of votes coming in. So we'll give 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll there and showing the results. So we see we have 20 voting in favour, 0 against and 1 abstention.
Okay. Now, Mark, you can actually use your 42 chair votes, but I don't think it's necessary because the online votes were 181 for, 3 against and 6 abstentions. So, Mark, you have been reappointed as a director. Well done. And then we move on to our last motion, motion 10, which is to re-elect Ord as a director of the co-op, proposed by Mark Luntley. Could I have a seconder? Could somebody choose one?
Adam, I think we'll go with Adam on this occasion, as James has had one in already. And I will launch the final motion.
Oh, we're sticking to time plan as well.
Okay. A couple more votes just to come in, I think. So we'll give it, we might have lost a few more people, so we'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold there. 22 votes in favour, no against and no abstentions.
Excellent. Online, again, Mark is voting 42 in favour. We had 174 for, 4 against and 12 abstentions. So Ord re-elected to the board. Well done. And I think that, that concludes all our voting. Josh, can I pass back to you?
Yes, thank you very much, Annette and Tammy and Sam. Thank you to all board members. Congratulations to Mark and Ord. As Vice Chair, I would like to reiterate how much time and effort Mark puts in as Chair. It truly is staggering for wind and solar and loads of other things as well. So we're very grateful and lucky to have him. But thank you also to all the other board members. I think we have an excellent board, kind of well-rounded board with lots of interesting people on it. Hopefully we're trying to help make this a successful co-op. Thanks to the AGM organisers, so everyone at FX and Energy for All, and to Ryan, who's put in a lot of time and effort as well. It's gone very well, and I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Although we appreciate we've got one more session left. We are very grateful for your attendance today and all your questions and comments. It's great to have such an active member base, and it's something we're looking to foster and improve on. And we're really keen to hear all your ideas and thoughts and challenges. Anything, please put them to us. We hope to see you in person on 15th of October at the Cornerstone in Didcot for Westmill Futures, which will also be Westmill Solar 10-year celebration, which will be very good. I know Mark has his hand up, so are you going to try talking?
I'll try. I'm sounding a bit hoarse. I just wanted to as chair, add a personal thanks to Tom, to you, Josh, to Ryan, and to Annette, because when I contracted COVID 2.5 days ago, I then said, look, I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this session, and everybody jumped in at short notice to do it. So thank you to all for doing that. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Mark. I mean, apologies, I'm a little bit out on the futures, but it's not for another 10 minutes, is it? So
it isn't. We can either, if there's some more questions, we can all
yeah,
deal with some questions in the chat.
Yeah, good idea, Sam. I think we may have missed some more. Sorry, Tammy, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, Kevin's asked, there was £4,500 of share capital issued in 2021 in the accounts. What was this for, and who got the shares?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but if you can pass his email address on, I'll find the answer and email back.
We'll get all the chat downloaded anyway, so any questions we do miss, we can put in the
AGM minutes. Yes.
Yeah. James has said that there ought to be a vote of thanks to all the board members for all their hard work on the members' behalf.
Thank you. It's very nice of you to say.
Pamela saying it's nice to see it's currently windy outside. Yes.
And sunny. Oh, it's sunny here in Devon.
I'm definitely in favour of the wind.
Jill's asking what happens to the withdrawn shares. Are they put up for resale to other co-op members?
Not necessarily. No, although, you know, what we're trying to do though is try and bring in younger membership. So I'd rather see, you know, if we do have any withdrawn shares, that we can kind of like hold them back. And if we get younger members that want to join, then all the better. It's just a shame. Our demographic of membership is probably an older generation, because we've probably got a bit more disposable income. But what happens, you know, we've got this life extension on the turbines. We've got planning for another 15 years. I will be long retired by then.
Won't.
I won't.
Let you.
So we want
where you live.
You know where I live. We want younger people to get involved, and the best way to do that is let them get on board, become a member. Even if we have to start reducing the membership application, I don't know, £20–50 or something like that. Get them involved, because they're going to be our future generation, and to keep this going. Because the two Westmills joining together, they want to do more than just, you know, this is our beyond generation. We don't just want to sit back and, well, let the wind blow or the sun shine. We want to do other things with the two co-ops.
And then Jill's also asked, how many members are in Westmill Wind Farm, so she can understand the percentage of all members who vote versus members who have not voted. Well, I think, was it 10% last year we worked out, Ryan?
Yeah.
So we've probably got more than that this year, but not quite 20%.
Needs to go up a lot more. And if anybody can come up with any really good ideas to try and, I don't know, help or make people respond. We've tried to make it easy that you can find information online and vote very easily. But, you know, people leave busy lives, don't they?
I think what we can lead on from that is it leads really a lot of these questions coming in now about engaging with younger people, our social pages. It really does lead nicely into our next session, which starts in 5 minutes, on the future session. What this looks like, what does our comms strategy look like? How do we want to connect with our members going forward? And myself and Angela Bryant is going to be heavily involved in that. And this next session will be led by Josh and Mari as well, and it's going to be quite an exciting session. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And from the emails that we have said this week, trying to encourage people that haven't voted to vote. We have had some feedback, so we can go away from that and look at their reasons and what we do about that.
Yeah.
Just noticed a question from Dave relating to green taxes. Can you interpret for us, me, what this relates to? Is it all due to renewables, and could these be changed if with political will, I guess? So yeah, I think it is a lazy term, maybe, to probably cover things that probably should be covered through taxation, but aren't that recovered through energy bills. So this is the renewable obligation, the feed-in tariff, and the contracts for difference. and other things that are more energy wide, like the capacity market and things like that. So these are things that help foster investment in renewables in the UK, but are recovered through energy bills. So they're often pointed to when we're in situations like this with high energy prices, or high energy bills, I should say, kind of a useful scapegoat for right-wing media and others, when they're potentially detracting from the wider benefit and the future costs if we hadn't have done what we have done and what we're paying for. So a bit of a personal view there. Doug, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I think you covered it very well, Josh. It is it's sort of stick to beat renewables with, and I think the chances of the renewables obligation that, of course, Westmill Wind receives and Westmill Solar, the chances of that actually being ended is very, very low. Just because the trade associations would immediately take legal action and probably win. So it's just a kind of right-wing trope, really.
It's worth noting that if Cameron hadn't stepped back on the various green measures that they were going to do, that we would be in less of a mess in terms of fuel poverty now. Energy would be costing us much less, and it's just a painful experience. People haven't taken the lead that we've tried to lead on co-ops and on renewable energy. But it's lovely to, on one level, to be in a position to be able to say that, but terrible on another for individual and the government, our government situation.
Yeah.
There's a question there, Josh. Just obviously Tom's answered it on behalf of Solar as well. It's in regard Kevin Poplar. I'm not aware of any possibility for anyone to buy shares in Westmill Wind or West Solar at the moment, or am I wrong on this? Tom's answered obviously on behalf of Solar and what our general strategy is going forward. What's the is it a similar take on from Wind as well? Yeah,
I think Mark's just answered as well with regard to Wind. Yeah, I think it's just something we're looking at in the main, and with regard to kind of clearer view on kind of our future as a co-op and kind of what we want to say,
yes,
for want of a better term.
Yeah, I think
that's a good time. We're a couple of minutes ahead, but I don't see there any harm in that. I will bring up the slides for our next section. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay.
Great.
The slides. Josh again. Josh again.
Got me again, I'm afraid. So yeah, this session's looking at kind of future Westmill. More really just dealing with what kind of how we approach it, not really saying what we're going to do in the future, because it's very hard to do, and we're in the kind of first steps of that journey. But just to give some context to start off, really touched on it, but just to reiterate, the models for both co-ops are heavily reliant on government-backed support mechanisms. So for wind, it's the renewal obligation, and for solar, it's the feed-in tariff. Winds ends in March 2027 and solar in 2036, so they've got a bit more time. But that really drives a need to understand how we can operate when we're not in receipt of these support mechanisms. Just as a general consideration, but also in the context of a radically changing energy system. And what I mean when I say that, very kind of broad brush, is a massive increase in renewable penetration on the system, which in turn creates system operability issues. Generally, most renewables is up in Scotland. It's intermittent. So they bring on balancing considerations for the grid operator, and they unfortunately mean a lot of energy needs to get constrained off as well, which is a shame. No one really wants to turn down a wind farm, and that problem is significant. It was very significant last year, and is growing unless the grid is improved or we create a better system for managing that type of system. But when changes are brought about to ameliorate or to factor in these changes, they can create opportunities for us or challenges for us. You know, they might need changes to the grid system or the way grid's paid for that might affect us, or it might create a new energy market or a revenue stream that we might be able to participate in. When I say we, I'm talking about wind and solar here. So it's important for us to keep our eye on these things and keep up to date, and hopefully we're doing that. So yeah, it's important to keep on top of them just to make sure we don't, none of them threaten our current model. You know, for example, you know, an even more right-wing government could take away the renewable obligations like they did in Spain, which would be extremely awful, extremely unlikely, as Doug said. But you know, it's those are kind of worst case, but also opportunities, which is probably more relevant. Kind of, are there changes to how you pay for the grid and things like that? Are there new markets? Can we get more for our energy? Things like that. So that's the kind of context and what's driving it from a, I guess, from a kind of financial and operational point of view. So next slide, please, Sam. So obviously what I described then is a very wide range of things for us to consider. So we've tried to focus it so to help manage workload, or you know, on board members, keep it manageable, and make it as effective as possible. So broadly, there's these 3 elements. I think there's one at the beginning as well that isn't on here, but just to call out, it's been talked a few times in the chat, but excuse me, storage is something that is already being developed by a separate community interest company with Adam, a landowner, in it, and we've been working with them to help kind of look at that model, and that's going to be, you know, we're looking to consider that as part of our long-term model kind of process. Then, as I said, we've been looking at the long-term model for wind, talked about that previously, and then it's kind of more collaborative then on kind of how we might do things in conjunction with solar or in conjunction with the battery project, you know, however that turns out. Mary's going to talk about the Project Leo project that she's working on, and we've been involved in. It's very exciting. And then Ryan's talking about improved communications and broader community stakeholder engagement, which again, there's been lots of chat about that throughout this morning. So that's very pertinent, and definitely something we are very keen to kind of build on. So next slide, please, Sam. So I'm going to talk a bit about the wind updates. It's been something I've been working on. So again, just to go back to the beginning, we had kind of were fairly confident that the turbines were capable of operating effectively for another 15 years, past their kind of 25-year planning life that they have. And so we thought it would be worthwhile, whilst we have a sympathetic council, to try and extend our current planning consent for the wind farm. So we did that, and it was very good with the help of Energy for All, which we're very grateful to. And so essentially we have exactly the same planning consent with all the same conditions. The only thing we've changed is struck out the word 25 and changed it for 40, which is excellent. So we've always got that as something. It doesn't mean we have to do it, and to be clear, it doesn't mean we definitely will be doing it. It's just something that we have as an option. It's very useful as well if we do ever look to do something else. At the end of 25 years, we could maybe decide to take the turbines down and put something else there if turbines isn't economically feasible. It's good to have that planning consent there as your base case. It's to work in planning consent for wind farms, and it's a very useful thing to have anyway. So as I said before, we believe the turbines are capable of operating effectively and safely for this time period, and that's something that we have had verified. So we wanted to delve in a bit more into the financial model around, well, what if we did run the turbines as is for another 15 years past the 25-year operational life. We had a financial model, but we wanted to kind of test whether it was robust and something we could confidently talk to members about. So we commissioned a piece of work from Natural Power and Cornwall Insights to review our long-term financial model. So Natural Power focused on the technical element, so looking at our past performance and the way we structured the management of the assets and kind of spares we have and things like that, and associated costs we had planned for it in our financial model. And Cornwall Insights looked at the power prices we had forecasted, the ROC price, the REGO price, any other markets we can go into, like capacity market, things like that, and our costs as well, so our grid costs, and they also highlighted any potential changes to grid codes or just general energy codes or just the industry to see whether they could be an opportunity or a challenge for us as well. So we've had the initial findings from each of those consultants, and we need to delve into them a little bit more and to kind of then feed them into the overall financial model. But the headline is that they were positive. The financial model side of things, or the revenues, our model was perhaps a little bit conservative, so there's potential upside there. And the Natural Power report, you know, as an aside, they were very impressed with how we were managing the site. I think they were expecting a little bit less because we're a community, community wind farm, and again they kind of thought we were doing pretty well. So we're going to build that into the model, make sure we're confident in it, and then we'll be disseminating out to members. And then I think what's important is that we'll be using this as a springboard for all the other opportunities that there could be. And what I mean there is, well, there's so many different permutations. You know, we could do lots of different things. More turbines, repower. You know, by that I mean take down the turbines, put up a fewer larger turbines, batteries, EV charging. There's different ways you could sell your energy as well, different markets, a mixture of all of those. So you can, hopefully quickly appreciate how complicated this can get. So we're using this as a baseline to build on it. It's going to be an iterative approach, and we're hoping to kind of have that feedback loop with members to kind of let you know where we are. But we're really on the first steps of it, but we're trying to build for a long-term plan for Westmill, assuming that's what members want. And I think you do. I'd be disappointed if you didn't, but if you don't, please say. And I think that's it for me. So next slide, please, Sam. So I'm going to pass over to Mary, who's going to talk about Project Leo.
Thanks, Josh. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Project Leo before I dive into this slide. I guess I should just give a reminder, as it's been a while since we last updated on Project Leo, but Project Leo stands for Local Energy Oxfordshire. It's a project that is being led by Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks, which is the distribution network operator, so the local lower voltage grid operator in most of Oxfordshire. And partner on that bid is the Low Carbon Hub. And it's the Low Carbon Hub that invited us to participate in part of this project. They are running a set of smart and fair neighbourhood projects in which the challenges and opportunities that are on the radar of communities are taken as the starting point, and then what the opportunities and what the ways in which smart electricity systems might be able to help address those challenges or meet those opportunities is considered. So that will all get hopefully clearer as I get into something that's a bit more tangible in the detail. And the update here really is that we have undertaken a desktop flexibility review for the Westmill site. So what does that mean? It means that as part of this Project Leo, Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks are trialling a local marketplace for flexibility services. And flexibility services really just means that they would call on someone to either increase their generation or decrease their generation, or similarly increase their demand or decrease it, or operate storage facilities in a similar way in order to help them manage what's going on the electricity grid. And that really is about a changing role for Scottish and Southern because of the things that Josh had talked about earlier around increasing amounts of renewable generation on that low voltage and local part of the network. So it means that one of the challenges for managing the network and ensuring that we're all keeping the lights on is balancing the generation and demand at a local level. So that's what really the change that's happening at the local level of the network. And Scottish and Southern Electricity have been looking at some services that they might ask in terms of turning things up and turning things down on call. So the desktop flexibility review had a look at all of those services that they're trialling to see which ones might be appropriate for the site as we have it now, and also giving some consideration to the possibility for having battery storage on site. And the opportunity that kind of out of that study came up as the most interesting and immediately likely to be useful was what we described as behind the meter. So this diagram here is just intended to show you very, very high level the layout in the site, where we have got a connection into the local network for each of the solar and for the wind generators. And for each of those connections, there is some paperwork that sets out the terms of the connection, and the arrows up and down there are just to indicatively indicate that the narrower arrow is just indicating that in both cases for wind and solar, we're allowed to import a small amount of electricity, and that's the electricity that comes in to run things on the site when they're not generating, and it's pretty small. Of course, as you'd expect, what we established in order to be able to connect these generators was permission to export power to the grid. And so in the case of wind, we've got permission to export up to 6.9 megawatts. And in the case of solar, we've got permission to export up to 4.65 megawatts. So if you see those numbers and you are very up on your numbers, you might notice they're not identically the same as the operating capacity that we have in each of those plants. And that's just the difference between what's installed and what we have permission in principle to export in terms of power. And happily, it's the right way around. In principle, we can export more than we actually are. So we're not breaking any rules there when we're at peak export. However, the analysis that we did was to look at how much we were actually using that permission to export that we've got, and whether there was an opportunity to or a benefit that might happen from looking at shared capacity arrangements. So I'll explain that a little bit more detail what that means. But if we could go on to the next slide. So basically what you're seeing here in this purple block is along kind of the bottom axis there, there's essentially you're moving through half-hourly settlement periods. So that's all the little half-hour blocks during the course of a 24-hour period, and those are the periods by which the electricity markets are organised and trades are made on. So that's the reason for it being half-hourly. But essentially, the important thing is it's progressing across the course of a day. And then in the vertical axis, what we're looking at is all the days in the year. So basically, this rectangle is visually showing you the time across each day for the entirety of the year. And the colour scheme here is based on data from 2020, but the results were very similar for other years that we looked at. And where it's coloured in purple, what that means is that between the combined export of the solar farm and the wind farm, we've still got an excess of capacity. So we're not using that maximum amount of power that we're allowed to export. So we've taken the total that wind is allowed to export up to, the total solar is allowed to export up to. We've taken off what we were actually exporting in that period, and then the colour code is telling you what the difference is. So where it's purple, what it's saying is that combined across both solar and wind, there was 4,000, is that megawatts, is that right? I feel like that is the wrong figure, but anyway, 4,000 units that we had permission to be able to export, but which we were not exporting. And so what we're saying is that we've got an asset there in our connection that we're not making full hours. And I agree, Gary, you've just come in. In the background, my brain was whirring away thinking it must be megawatt hours, and that's because we're looking at half-hourly period. So indeed. And as you can see, what that means is across most of the year, there's actually very few periods when we haven't got quite a large amount of spare capacity on the two connections that we have. And actually, you know, if you squint, you'll notice hardly any red at all and very little black. And that is just showing you that for most of the time, we've got, you know, more than 1,000 megawatt hours in that period free. So basically, the conclusion of this is that there's a lot available there that we're not using for the vast majority of the time, although clearly at certain times we do need it. So if we go on to the next slide.
Just to say, Barry, we don't have a massive amount of time left. Apologies,
Okay.
it's my fault.
I
overran.
promise.
Yeah,
so this
thank
is
you.
just coming back to that original schematic. And if we click on to the next slide, that's then showing essentially, in theory, what we could do if we were able to combine those two connection agreements together on the basis that we would then operate everything behind that new kind of virtual connection point in accordance of the total sum. So if we skip on again. So what does that tell us about? Well, first of all, if we were to come to an agreement with SSEN, a shared capacity agreement, that would allow us to make more use of our existing connections that we already have. So that could, in principle, allow us to put more generation capacity to be installed, as long as we kept the cap at the cap for the whole lot, and we were managing the balance of that generation so that when both solar and wind were at their full capacity, we knew that we weren't going to exceed the total. And it also could, for example, reduce the amount of additional export capacity that would be needed if we were to put a battery storage installation in. So just to wrap up, the next step is to understand in a bit more detail what a shared capacity agreement would actually look like in more detail. And then that'll tell us more about whether it's something that we actually want to do or not. that's me.
Thank you very much. Just go on then, please, Sam, to the final bit, which is about the members' comms. And apologies, Ryan, it was my massive overrunning that has not given you much time.
No, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to keep this really short and sweet, guys, and I want to set the scene for October's event, which is the in-person event in Didcot that we're running. And I do state in person because we want to engage with you members, with all of our members, and as many as possible. The best way to do this is we can keep running online events, but ultimately actually getting you there in person. We found that actually it does have a real benefit to what we're trying to achieve. And it just leads me on nicely to speak about our strategy going forward for comms and membership. We are looking to improve our communication broader community, and I think there's just messages in the group. I think Janet and Jill, you both made comments saying about LinkedIn isn't suitable for you. You don't want extra communication channels. We would never penalise any of our members to say you have to sign up to LinkedIn, you have to sign up to Facebook or Twitter to get a communication from Westmill Wind. What we're actually doing, we're actually increasing the number of communication channels that we can engage with each of our members. Because Janet, you might prefer just to stay on Facebook, and Jill, you might just want to have emails. But ultimately, by increasing the actual communication channels, we're increasing how we can engage with each of our members, and actually open up new doors for new members when we actually go looking for them. So ultimately, this is part of a strategy, and not to penalise certain individuals if they're not on LinkedIn, etc. So I think ultimately what we're trying to do, we're trying to make this being part of Westmill Wind and Westmill Solar more inclusive for our members. And over the next 6 months, you start to see how that will shape. It started today with our online AGM, and as you can see, we've finished with this future session today to look at what this can look like going forward. Next slide, please. And ultimately, we want to utilise the Westmill Futures event in October to show you what the event is. What Westmills look like over the next 10 years. We want to engage with our partners, our members. We want to show you what we want to do, how we want to link in with Westmill Wind, Westmill Solar, and WeSet, and make it all more about Westmill. So there'll still be individual organisations, but we'll make them more inclusive together, so they're all in one place. So Facebook, Twitter messages, emails will come inclusively. The idea is inclusively from Westmill Wind, Solar, and WeSet, our charity partner. So there's plenty. So there's plenty of work for us to be doing, and this will take place on website. This will take place on through events and through workshops as well that we plan on run later in the year. So ultimately, I know we've run it slightly over, and I'm keen for us to finish on time because I really appreciate everyone attending the AGMs and the sessions today. And before I hand back to Tom Parkinson, just to close, just a reminder, October the 15th, the Cornerstone venue in Didcot. We will make details of the event available in the next month, so you can see how to join, and we can go from there. But we're really excited about what the future looks like for Westmill, and hopefully this has given you a real taste today that we're not just here just to run an AGM, we're here with a strategy to develop this model over the next decade. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mary. And thank you to all the presenters today. I mean, obviously to Rose, which I thought was a really interesting idea in terms of how do we get new people in. To all of you on the futures and the community funding who do a whole amount of work that isn't always recognised, and I think we need to communicate that to everybody. I think Sam has just put out a questionnaire on the chat, and it will be emailed to everybody straight after this. So if you have feedback on this event, please let us know. We really want to hear it. We want to make it better. We want to make the Didcot event as good as it possibly can be. So only really remains at this point to say thank you to everybody organising, Ryan, Tammy, Sam, everybody who's presented, and to thank you as members for staying the course. So I'm delighted that participant numbers have actually held up throughout the 4 hours, and I think that's a tribute to how interesting it's all been. So thank you to you. Have a really good weekend, and we look forward to seeing you on October the 15th in Didcot. Thanks very much, everybody.